I'm Louise Gonzalez. I'm 72 years old. A friend called me last week, a well-meaning friend, and she said, "Lou, you should really let me set you up with my neighbor, a nice man, someone to take care of you in your golden years." And you know what? I was so angry, I almost hung up the phone. My hand was shaking. Because that phrase, "take care of me," it's a trigger. It unlocked a deep regret I've been carrying about my own marriage, about my Frederick. I spent years, especially after he died, believing my value was tied to never being a burden, to always being the caregiver. And it cost me. It almost cost us the chance to have a real equal partnership, built on mutual joy instead of duty. I nearly forgot how to just receive love without feeling guilty about it. Let me tell you what happened. It started about a year after Frederick retired. The house in Highland Park was so quiet. The kids were grown. My career with the Gresham Police was behind me. I filled the silence with my hobbies, quilting, knitting, cooking these big Sunday dinners for the kids and grandkids that nobody could finish. I was running my life like I used to run my precinct. And Frederick, he was a little adrift. His love language had always been service, but now it went into overdrive. He'd hover. "What can I do for you, Lou? Can I get you anything? Let me do that." It was constant. At first, I was polite. "I've got it, honey." But after a while, it began to grate. It felt less like love and more like I was being managed. Like he saw me as someone who needed looking after. The pressure built until one afternoon in my sewing room. I was elbows deep in a complicated double wedding ring quilt pattern. My focus absolute. The door opened and in he came, for the third time that hour, with a cup of tea. He set it down carefully next to my sewing machine, with that patient, cheerful smile of his, and I just snapped. I looked up and said, "Frederick, I'm not an invalid. I can get my own tea." I saw his face fall, just crumple. That cheerful patience shattered into pure, hurt confusion. He didn't say a word. He just turned and walked out. The silence after was heavy. I felt terrible, but also justified. He needed to back off. We were tense for a few weeks after that. Quiet. Then, one evening, my arthritis was flaring up. My fingers were stiff as I tried to knit a sweater for my grandson, Mateo. I was struggling with a stitch. My hands just wouldn't cooperate. Frederick sat down beside me on the couch. He watched me for a minute. I braced myself for him to sigh and take the needles from me, but he didn't. He just said softly, "Show me the next stitch. That's all. Show me." It changed everything. He wasn't taking over. He wasn't doing it for me. It was an invitation to do it together. It was the first thread of a new connection, and I felt surprised by how much it meant. I started to see our dynamic clearly then. For decades, I was the caregiver. To the town, to our two kids, to the house. He saw my retirement as his chance to finally reciprocate, to be my safe harbor after all those years of me holding everyone else up. But by only allowing myself to be the giver, I'd walled him out. I turned him into just a helper, not a true partner. This realization sat with me, simmering, until we found ourselves side by side in the kitchen, making his famous chili. That's where the truth finally had to be spoken. I was chopping an onion, slowly, carefully. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw his hand move. Instinct. He was reaching for the knife to take over. This time I stopped him. I put my hand over his on the counter. I said, "No, I'm slow, but I'm not done." He pulled his hand back. The air was charged with the smell of cumin and onions. I knew I had to say the rest. I took a breath. "When you try to do everything for me," I said, my voice steadier than I felt, "it doesn't make me feel cared for. It makes me feel retired from my own life." The words just hung there. He was quiet for a long time. He just stood there, stirring the pot. I thought I'd broken something for good. Then he spoke, and his words flipped the whole script on me. He said, "All those years on the force, Lou, you took care of the whole town. You held everyone up. I just wanted to be your safe harbor." It hit me like a physical blow. I'd been so busy being the unbreakable boat, sailing through everything, that I never let us just be two people in the same boat. I never let him sail with me. I felt heartbroken and clarified all at once. That was our turning point. We didn't solve it all that night, but we started to. We began to learn a new language. And it wasn't about grand gestures. It was in the small, quiet things. Like I'd be standing in front of the pantry, looking for a specific spice. He'd walk by, see me scanning the shelves, and without a word, he'd reach past me and pluck the jar of smoked paprika from the back. He'd just hand it to me. "No, here, let me get that for you." No fanfare, just attention. He'd noticed I was looking for it. That was it. And for the first time, that didn't feel like him taking over a task. It felt like teamwork. It felt like being seen. Or I'd be working on a quilt, and he'd come sit in the armchair in the corner of my sewing room with his book. He wouldn't ask if I needed anything. He'd just be there, his presence. And after a while, I'd find myself saying, "Can you hold this corner talk for me for a second?" And he would, and it felt good. It felt like I was asking for partnership, not issuing an order or accepting a charity. The real test came with the cooking. Those big Sunday dinners were my domain, my therapy. But my hands. Some days, the arthritis made peeling a bag of potatoes a real chore. One Sunday, I had everything laid out on the counter. Frederick came in, poured himself a glass of iced tea, and leaned against the fridge. He watched me for a minute, wincing a little as I worked the peeler. He didn't move. He just said, "That looks like it hurts today." I nodded. "It's a bit stiff." He took a sip of his tea. "You want to tell me how you like those potatoes cut for the roast? I could do the cutting if you do the seasoning. You're the boss on the flavor. You see the difference?" He didn't say, "Oh, let me do that. You go sit down." He offered a specific collaborative solution. He put me in charge of the part that didn't hurt, the part I loved. the herbs, the garlic, the butter. He took the part that was pure painful labor, and he asked for my instructions. You're the boss on the flavor. That simple phrase, it acknowledged my expertise. It made us a team in the kitchen, not a patient and a nurse. We stood side by side at that counter for an hour, him chopping, me seasoning, talking about nothing, about the grandkids, about the neighbor's new dog, about a movie we wanted to see. It was easy. It was normal. It was the kind of ordinary togetherness I realized we'd been missing. I hadn't been letting him in, and he'd been trying to bust the door down with acts of service. Now, we were just in the same room, doing a thing. That's when I started to understand the grammar of it, like I was learning a new language late in life. Taking care isn't about the verbs, the doing, the fixing, the fetching. It's about the nouns, attention, presence, partnership. It's him noticing I read the same line in my book 3 times and saying, tired? It's me noticing he's been staring out the window at the rain for too long and asking, penny for your thoughts? It's not solving, it's witnessing, it's sharing the space. We had a few good years of that new, comfortable rhythm. We'd sit on the porch in Gresham, him with his coffee, me with my knitting, and the silence between us wasn't empty or tense. It was full. It was the silence of 2 people who don't need to fill every second because they're just glad to be sharing the seconds. Then he got sick. It was fast. Pancreatic cancer. And the whole dynamic shifted again. But this time, we had a foundation. This time, I had to learn to be the caregiver in a way I never had before. Not as a cop, not as a mom, but as a wife whose partner was leaving. And he had to learn to be cared for, truly, without being able to give anything back but his presence. It was the hardest thing I've ever done. But because of those years of learning, of stumbling towards each other, it was different. I could bathe him, help him to the bathroom, adjust his pillows, and it didn't feel like I was robbing him of his dignity. It felt like an honor, because he let me. He'd look at me, so tired, and say, I'm sorry, Lou. And I'd say, don't you dare be sorry. You showed me how to sit still. Now let me show you how much I love you. It was a brutal, beautiful balance. He died in our bed, in the house in Highland Park, with my hand in his. And after he was gone, the grief was a physical weight, but so was the gratitude. We'd figured it out. Maybe not for as long as I wanted, but we'd cracked the code. So when my friend called and said that about finding a man to take care of me, the anger was instant, because it reduced all of that. The struggle, the learning, the hard-won partnership to a transaction. It assumed that at my age, I'm now the passive recipient of care. It ignored the fact that I had a love who learned and who taught me that care is a conversation, not a monologue. It ignored the fact that I had a love who learned and who taught me that care is a conversation, not a monologue. But the hardest part of that conversation came at the very end. And I need to tell you about that too, because that's where I finally understood the cost of getting it wrong for so long. Frederick was in the hospital for the last time. They'd sent him home to hospice, but there was a crisis, an infection, and they had to readmit him for a couple of days to get it under control. I was exhausted, running on fumes and black coffee. I'd been at the hospital for 12 hours straight. One of our daughters, Maria, finally insisted I go home, take a shower, get a few hours of real sleep in my own bed. I'll stay right here, Mom. I'll call if anything changes. I promise. I didn't want to go, but I was so tired I was seeing double, so I went. I drove back to the quiet house in Highland Park. I took the world's fastest shower. I fell into our bed, into his side, and I was out before my head hit the pillow. The phone rang at 3:17 a.m. I know because I looked. The green numbers on the clock radio were seared into my brain. It was Maria, and her voice was tight. Mom, you need to come back, now. He's asking for you. I drove back to the hospital in a kind of numb panic. The roads were empty. The world was asleep. All I could think was, I left him. I left him when he was asking for me. When I got to his room, he was awake. Awake but so still. The machines were beeping softly. Maria kissed my cheek, whispered, He's been waiting, and slipped out to give us privacy. I pulled the chair right up to the bed and took his hand. His skin was papery, cool. Hey you, I said, trying to sound cheerful. My police voice, the one that could calm a riot. It sounded hollow. He turned his head slowly. It took effort. His eyes found mine. He didn't smile. He just looked at me. And his gaze was so clear, so terribly present. He squeezed my hand, just a little. Lou, he said. His voice was a whisper of air. You came back. Of course I came back. I'll always come back. He was quiet for a minute, just breathing. Then he said, I was worried. About what, honey? That you'd think you had to stay, that you'd run yourself into the ground. He paused, gathering strength. You always think you have to do everything yourself, even this. Those words, they went right through me, because he was right. Even in his dying, I'd been treating it like a job. My final assignment, be the perfect caregiver, manage the medications, coordinate with the nurses, hold the family together, do it all without flinching. And he'd seen it. Of course he'd seen it. I'm fine, I said automatically. The old lie. No, he whispered. Don't. Not now. He took another shaky breath. I need to tell you something. I leaned closer. I'm listening. All that time, after I retired, I was so clumsy. A tear escaped from the corner of his eye and traced a path into his white hair. I just wanted to make it up to you for all the years you carried everything. I wanted to be your soft place to land, but I didn't know how. so I just kept bringing you tea. I started to cry. I couldn't help it. I put my forehead on our joined hands on the bed. I know, I choked out. I know you did. And you hated it. I didn't hate it, I said, lifting my head. I was just scared. Of what? And there it was. The deepest, stupidest truth. The one I'd never said out loud. Not in all our talks. Not during the chilly conversation. Not in our good years of partnership. I looked at this man, the love of my life, and I said it. I was scared that if I let you do things for me, I'd forget how to do them myself. And then if you left, I'd be helpless. I swallowed hard. And then you got sick, and you are leaving. And I have to do everything myself anyway. And I'm not scared of being alone. I'm a cop's kid. I've been ready for that since I was 20. I'm scared that I wasted all that time we could have just been together because I was too proud to let you bring me a damn cup of tea without making it a federal case. I said it, all of it, the fear, the pride, the wasted time. In the hospital room at 4 a.m. with the smell of antiseptic and the sound of his labored breathing. He didn't say anything for a long time. He just looked at me. Then he lifted his other hand, the one with the IV, and he touched my cheek. His fingers were so cold. Luis Gonzalez, he said, and his voice was a little stronger, like he was using the very last of his fuel. You are the least helpless person I have ever known. You could never be helpless. Letting me help you, that wouldn't have made you weak. It would have made us, sooner. He dropped his hand, exhausted. We got there, though, didn't we? At the end, we got there, I whispered, crying openly now. So when I'm gone, he said, his eyes closing for a second, you remember that. You asked for help. From the kids, from your friends. You asked for company. Not because you need taking care of, but because you deserve the company. That was the last real conversation we had. He slipped into a mostly sleep after that. He died 2 days later, at home, in our bed, just like he wanted, with me right there, holding his hand, not because I was performing a duty, but because I couldn't imagine being anywhere else. But those words in the hospital, that was my breaking point. That's when the full weight of it hit me. I sat in that vinyl chair, holding his hand as he slept, and I felt so stupid, so incredibly, heartbreakingly stupid. I'd built my entire identity as the strong one, the independent one, the caregiver, and I'd worn it like armor. But the terrible joke was, the armor wasn't to keep other people out. It was to keep my own fear in. The fear of being needy. The fear of being a burden. And in doing that, I'd burdened him. I'd made him carry my pride. I'd made him tiptoe around my independence. I'd made our first years of retirement, which should have been easy and sweet, into a minefield of misunderstood intentions. We got it right eventually. We learned, but we lost years, good years, quiet years on the porch that could have been filled with that easy companionship from the start, instead of the tense dance of him offering and me refusing. That's the cost. That's what I paid for my rigid idea of strength. Not money, not things, time. The one thing you can never get back. I drove home from the hospital that morning after he'd fallen asleep. The sun was coming up over Gresham, turning Mount Hood pink, and I didn't feel strong. I felt shattered. But in the cracks of that broken feeling, something else started to seep in, a understanding. He'd given me my final assignment, and it wasn't to be strong. It was to be human, to let people in, not to take care of me, but to share the life I had left. I walked into our quiet kitchen. I put the kettle on, and I stood there, waiting for it to boil, and I thought about all the cups of tea I'd rejected, and I made myself a promise. Standing there in my kitchen in Highland Park, the morning light washing over the counters Frederick had wiped down 1,000 times. I promised I would never again confuse independence with isolation, that I would honor what we'd learned by living it, even without him. Here's what I understand now at 72. What I wish I'd understood at 62. Independence isn't about doing everything yourself. It's about having the clarity to choose how you connect. It's the power to say, I can do this, but I'd enjoy it more with you. That's the difference. My value was never tied to my ability to never need anything. My value was in my capacity to love, and part of loving is letting yourself be loved. Not serviced, not managed, seen and accompanied. Frederick wasn't trying to take my independence. He was trying to join his life to mine in the only way he knew how, after decades of me being the one holding the world up. He saw my career, those 25 years with the Gresham PD, the chaos, the responsibility, and he just wanted to give me peace. His mistake was thinking peace meant me sitting still. My mistake was thinking accepting peace meant admitting weakness. The care we actually need at any age has nothing to do with physical tasks. It's in the attention. It's the silent swap of a jar. It's the show me instead of the let me. It's asking, would you like company? Instead of declaring, let me do that for you. One is an invitation to partnership. The other is a declaration of takeover. I rejected the takeover for years, but in my anger, I kept slamming the door on the partnership too. So here is my direct advice, especially if you spent your life being the strong one, the caregiver, the reliable rock. Practice a new sentence. When someone offers help, before your automatic, I've got it, flies out, pause. See if you can say instead, you know, I'd appreciate your help with this. Or, would you mind keeping me company while I do it? It changes everything. It transforms a power dynamic into a connection. And if you're the one wanting to help, try that too. Can I keep you company is a gift. Let me do that can feel like a judgment. This isn't just about marriage. It's about my kids, my 4 grandkids, my friends. After Frederick died, they'd call and say, Mom, what can we do? And I'd say, nothing. I'm fine. I was upholding the brand. Louise Gonzalez, former officer, never needs help. But I remembered my promise. So when my daughter asked again, I said, you could come over Saturday and help me sort through some of your dad's tools in the garage. I'd like the company. And she did. We didn't just sort tools. We told stories. We cried a little. We were together. I wasn't a burden. I was her mother, sharing a hard task and making it lighter by sharing it. That's the realistic hope I want to give you. It is never, ever too late to change this pattern. You can start today with one small thing. Let someone in, not to take over your life, but to sit beside you in it. The pride that tells you you must do everything alone is a liar. It steals the quiet, ordinary moments of connection that are the actual point of this whole thing. My friend who wanted to set me up, she meant well, but I called her back. I said, Janice, I appreciate you thinking of me, but I don't want someone to take care of me. If I ever find someone again, I want a partner, someone to share the view with, not someone to push my wheelchair toward it. She got quiet. Then she said, You know, Lou, I think I've been looking for that too. Maybe my story isn't just for the fiercely independent. Maybe it's for the would-be caregivers too, trying to love us in the only way they know. This channel is full of stories like mine. People who've lived a long time and learned some things the hard way. If what I've shared about Frederick and the tea and the chili and the terrible, beautiful hospital conversation resonates with you, I'd be so grateful if you'd subscribe and turn on notifications. My story is just one. There are so many more here that might give you the exact piece of wisdom you need. Leave me a comment down below. Tell me, has there been a cup of tea moment in your life? A time when someone's way of loving felt smothering, or when your own pride walled someone out? Or maybe you're the one who's been bringing the tea, feeling confused when it was rejected. Let's talk about it. If this story meant something to you, hit the like button. It helps others find these conversations. And please, share it. Share it with your stubborn parent who won't accept help. Share it with your partner who's always trying to fix things. Share it with a friend who's just lost someone and is building walls of fine around their grief. If you have a story of your own, something you've learned about love, loss, independence, or family, there's a form in the description. The team here looks at every submission. Your story could be the one that helps someone else feel less alone. Maybe next time we'll be sharing yours. A book that helped me frame a lot of this after Frederick was gone is called Necessary Losses by Judith Viorst. It's not a happy book, but it's an honest one about all the letting go we do across a lifetime. There's a link in the description if you're interested. Don't make my mistake. Don't waste the good, quiet years you have, whether with a partner, a friend, or your family, protecting a fortress of independence that leaves you lonely inside. True strength isn't in never needing. It's in having the courage to need and to accept the help that's offered with grace. It's in building a life where care is a conversation, spoken in the quiet grammar of shared presence. That's the care we actually need. That was Frederick's final gift to me, and it's the one I try to live by every single day.